What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and Senior Bowl week has just wrapped up. So here are some of my winners and some of my losers. We're not going to go over every single guy in the Senior Bowl, but we're going to go over some of the winners, some of the losers, guys that kind of stood out, whether it's for good reasons or bad reasons. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so the first guy we're going to talk about is the one that everyone's talking about, and that's Quintin Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo. And Quintin Mitchell came in and just dominated day 1, 2, and 3. He just completely dominated. And usually on one-on-ones on the Senior Bowl, the wide receivers have the advantage a lot of the times. And, you know, usually it's impressive if a cornerback wins 30 to 40% of the time. But I feel like Quintin Mitchell won about 80% of his one-on-ones, which is insane. Like, nobody was getting open on him. Nobody was, beating him. And, I mean, the question really was one, can he play higher competition, and can he lock up higher competition? And I mean, he played really good against the wide receivers at the Senior Bowl. And then another thing that I at least had a question on was if he was going to be able to play press at the next level. And I mean, he showed that he can play press on the one-on-ones. I mean, that kind of silenced my questions on if he can play press. But now I still don't think a press-heavy team should draft Quintin Mitchell. I think he's better suited. I think he's better suited on the off-ball type of play style. But I mean, he can play press. He showed that. Like I said, super sticky on one-on-ones. And I mean, I think he played himself into the, number one cornerback conversation. I think he definitely solidified himself as a first rounder. But I think he's in the mix with guys like Terrion Arnold, Nate Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, guys like that to be the number one corner. I mean, he's got all the tools and he impressed. As long as he goes to the combine and, checks out athletically, I could see him being the number one corner come April. Moving on to the offensive side of the ball, I got Dominic Blaylock, the offensive guard / center from Kansas. He came in at 6'4", 323, so, pretty good size. He showed that he had pretty good flexibility, and he showed that he can play both guard and center at the next level. I mean, they had him lining up at center, and he held his own there. He's, really good guard. And I don't know if he can play tackle at the next level. I mean, maybe, in a pinch, for one game or so, he could play tackle, but I mean, I think he's really suited as a guard, but he can play center too if a team needs him to, and I think he can play tackle in a pinch. He just had a really good 3 days. I mean, I don't think he was the best offensive lineman, on the field or nothing like that, but I mean, he just showed that he was really solid, and I think he pushed his way into, day 2 of the draft, maybe mid-second round to late second round, in my opinion. I don't think, like I said, I don't think he was the best offensive lineman. Guys like Talise Fuaga, who I'm not going to have as a winner just because we knew Talise was very, very good, and he showed that he was very, very good. I mean, he just came in and did what he needed to do. So we're not going to talk about guys like Talise Fuaga who, just that we already knew were going to be really good. But another guy on the offensive line who I think played really, really well was Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. He came in at 6'3", 334 pounds, so pretty good size. He showed that he could play guard and center. I mean, he's definitely better suited as a center, but I mean, he can play guard if a team needs him to. He didn't really lose much at all, aside from one rep I seen from Michael Hall. Like I said, I didn't watch every single rep from every single day, but from what I seen from JPJ, he didn't lose much at all, aside from the one rep from Michael Hall, whose spoiler alert is going to be on the winners as well. So we'll get to him a little bit later. But JPJ just showed really good athleticism. He showed really good strength. He didn't really show any holes in his game. And I was already a bit higher on JPJ, but I think, again, kind of like a guy like Quintin Mitchell, I think he solidified his status as a first-round player. Some people are having him top 20 now, which I don't know about that. I think I like him in the back half of the first round. And then, like I said, moving on to another winner on the defensive side of the ball in Michael Hall Jr., the defensive interior from Ohio State, and he is a bit smaller. He's only 6'2", 280, so he's more of that, I guess, kind of Kalijah Kancey, Aaron Donald build. But just like those guys, he showed very, very good quickness. He showed that he had really good leverage. Like I said, he was one of the only players that give JPJ any type of trouble. I think Michael Hall was, for me at least, more of a day 2 pick, mid-day 2, like early third round. But I think he definitely played himself into a second round. And just like all of these guys, as long as he has a good combine, I think everything holds up. I think he should go early day 2, in my opinion. I think he can penetrate. I think he can rush the passer. And I think he can hold his own in run defense as well. So overall, he's just a really solid player, kind of in that Kalijah Kancey, Aaron Donald mold. Moving on to another winner, we have Gabe Hall. And his day one was insane. He was all people were talking about day one. He had a really good practice. And then he kind of tapered off day 2 and 3. Still played solid, but, that day one was amazing for him. He showed really good quickness. He had a really good swim move that he was using. The thing is, I don't know if that's going to work with, 4 other people on the offensive line, because he kind of took a wide, stance at it and then swimmed over. But in a real game, there's going to be a guard or there's going to be a tackle in your way, so you're not going to really be able to do that. So that's going to be interesting to see if that swim move works in actual games. I haven't done a full tape study on Gabe Hall, so I'm going to have to go back and see if that swim move actually works in real games. But, in the one-on-ones, it worked a lot. He measured in with really good length. He had 34.5-inch arms, which is, really solid for a defensive interior guy. Like I said, he was really good day one, and he's one of my biggest risers because I had him, late day 3, really. Now I think he played himself into early day 3, maybe back end of day 2, although I think he's more of a 4th-round kind of guy. Staying on the defensive line, we got Darius Robinson. Now, Darius Robinson is probably the guy most people are talking about, him and Quintin Mitchell as having the best, Senior Bowl week. And, he's 6'5", 286, a really good size. I think he played himself into first-round potential. I don't think he solidified that by any means, but I think he's more of that fringe round 1 guy. I like him a little bit more in early day 2, but, if a team takes him, round 1, I wouldn't be too terribly mad at that. He showed that he had a lot of pass rush moves. He showed swim, he showed power, he showed finesse, he showed everything that I like to see. And like I said, he flashed a lot of power in the one-on-ones. He was just causing trouble almost, all week. And really with these one-on-ones, you just want to see guys show flashes and kind of just things that are going to catch your eye, and that's exactly what Darius Robinson did. So, like I said, a lot of people are talking about him, and it's for good reason. Moving on to my last winner, I have Jamari Thrash, the wide receiver out of Louisville. Now, he did come in a little bit smaller. He was listed at 6'1", 185 at Louisville, but he came in at 5'11", so he's under that 6-foot mark, which is probably going to make him more of a slot receiver. But, he showed really, really good route running. He was creating separation with almost everyone he was going up against. And he showed that he had good hands and really good ball tracking ability, because on some of his deep routes, he showed good hands. He was catching almost everything. And he was able to make really good over-the-shoulder catches, which sometimes a lot of slot guys aren't the best at doing. So he is more of that vertical slot player. And I think he's going to be a nice little gadget player that I could see teams taking, late day 2, early day 3, in my opinion. Probably more of the 3rd round I would like him at. Well, overall, I had Jamari Thrash as a round 5 guy before Senior Bowl week, and now he's in my 3rd round conversation. So a big rise from Jamari Thrash, and I think a lot of people were impressed by him. And there were a few good receivers at the Senior Bowl, similar to Jamari Thrash. Ladd McConkey showed really good route running ability, really good separation. Struggled against press, but I think Ladd McConkey is more of a slot player anyways. And moving on to some of my losers, I do have Devontae Walker, a.k.a. Tez Walker, the wide receiver out of North Carolina. And he came in a little bit smaller, 6'1", 197. I believe he was listed at 6'2" or 6'3" at North Carolina, so he's a bit smaller. But he, at least for me, I already had kind of concerns with his hands. I didn't think he had the best hands. I think he had a 10% drop rate or something like that. And coming into the Senior Bowl, he was dropping everything. He was dropping easy passes. He almost made the catch of the day, but he dropped that. He was just dropping everything, which, as a receiver, you need to be able to catch the ball. And, he was getting a lot of hype as a 1st-round receiver. I think I even had him mocked in some of my mock drafts as a 1st-round guy to the Ravens or something like that. And now I think he's dropped into more of the 3rd-round conversation. He might get back into day 2 if he had a really good combine, but I think he's more of a 3rd-round talent. Now, one of the good things that I did see from Tez Walker was he showed really good speed. He was tracked as one of the fastest guys on the field, so at least that's one good thing. But, his hand concerns are really, really concerning me. Moving on to another loser, I do have Patrick Paul, the offensive tackle from Houston. And really with him, I obviously know he was more of a raw prospect, but when I was watching his one-on-ones, he didn't utilize his length at all. I can't remember who it was against, maybe, I can't remember, but he brought his hands back before going forward and, punching with them. He was bringing them back in more of a looping motion, which, I've never seen that before. I don't know if that's a technique. I don't know if that's something that he was taught, but it was not working. He was letting guys get right up inside of him, And with a guy like that who's 6'7" with really, really long arms, I mean, you want to be able to, get hands on the guys first, and he wasn't doing that consistently enough. He also wasn't a great athlete. He didn't show really good athleticism. He wasn't able to anchor really at all. He was losing against power all the time. And like I said, he wasn't getting hands on defenders. So, I mean, I knew coming in, Patrick Paul was more of a raw prospect, but, I mean, he definitely didn't help his case at all this week. And then another loser I have is on the offensive side of the ball, and that's Johnny Wilson. I have wide receiver question mark because I don't know if he's a receiver or if he's a tight end. He's 6'6", 237, so he's massive for a receiver, but he looks more like a tight end. I mean, he wasn't able to create any separation with the corners just because he's, he doesn't have great he doesn't have great acceleration at all. I think he's got decent top end speed, but he can't accelerate worth crap. So I think he's more of a tight end. I mean, he's a good run blocker for a receiver, so I think he could make that transition to tight end, although that's a really hard transition to make for a lot of guys from wide receiver to tight end, but I think he's going to have to do that because he can't create separation on the outside against, way smaller and way more athletic corners. And I don't think he uses his size to his advantage as much as he needs to. One of the good things I did have on Johnny Wilson, though, was he didn't have too many drops. That was one of my bigger problems with Johnny Wilson was his drops more than anything. And he showed that he was able to clean that up a little bit, but I mean, his separation and his acceleration is god-awful, so I think he's more of a tight end. And then probably the biggest loser of all of them and probably the, biggest drop in the draft was Kinane King. I thought Kinane King was a solid cornerback. I had him as my 10th corner in my cornerback rankings that I just dropped like a week ago maybe. And he came in a little bit undersized. He's under 6 foot. He's at 5'11", 189, so a bit shorter. I thought he was able to play on the outside, but now looking at it, I don't know if he's able to. I think he might be more of a slot guy because he wasn't good in press. On the one-on-ones, he was getting beat constantly. He was falling behind constantly, and I had him more of a press corner. Now he might be more of an off corner, maybe a slot corner. I don't know because, I mean, he was getting beat in press, which was, in my opinion, his strong suit. So he might be more of a slot guy, but, I mean, the fall-off of Kinane King needs to be studied because, I mean, coming into the summer, I had him as, my second or third best corner, and he didn't have a great season last season, so I thought he was going to return to Penn State. He ended up declaring for the draft, and now he's not had a good Senior Bowl, so, his kind of negatives are just piling on top of each other, and I could see him dropping to maybe day 3. I wouldn't be mad if a team took him in the third round, back in the third round, but I think he's played himself into a day 3 conversation, which is really unfortunate for Kinane King because he was one of my favorite players during summer. So, I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully he has a good combine and can bounce back from it. But for right now, he's a day 3 guy in my opinion. And that's going to do it. There was a lot more guys that we could have talked about like Ladd McConkey, Talise Fuaga, Braden Fisk, Leatu Latu. And I didn't really talk about any running backs, linebackers, and safeties or quarterbacks just because they're not the type of positions where it's going to, show in the one-on-ones and stuff like that. So those guys will be saved for another day, but these are just some of the winners and some of the losers. All the other guys were kind of in the middle or just what I expected them to be. So yeah, that's going to do it. Make sure you guys like the video. Consider subscribing if you like the content. And as always, this is the Draft Nerd. Thanks for watching.